Well, here we are. As you said, Volume 2 with the one and only, the guru, the analyst, Roger Stone. Thank you for coming back, Roger.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, he was in the first location that we had.
Yeah.
He was nice enough to go and show up over there when we were starting.
100%.
Now you're back. And your videos have always done very, very well. And people like to hear what you have to say.
Well, I think the videos do so well because the fact is, like, he tells it as it is, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And also the fact that I'm still banned in a number of places, so you can't find me on Facebook. Well, let me rephrase that. There's 5 Roger Stones on Facebook, but none of them are me. And by the way, folks, don't buy any crypto from them because I'm not selling crypto on Facebook. I'm banned on Facebook for life.
So, go on that.
I was going to ask you, though, when Elon bought X, you were still on X prior to that.
I was, but I was banned on X as well. So, no, I was completely banned. I was decapitated, but Elon brought me back. I had 980,000 followers when they chopped my head off. When I came back, I had 25,000, and I built it back up to about 700,000, and it grows every week because, it's about being interesting and telling people the truth.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
And I love Truth Social. It is more geared at speaking to people who agree with me.
Yep.
But there are still millions of them. So, no, I don't think I'll be back on Facebook or Instagram anytime soon. And I'm glad I'm not on TikTok because I don't want the red Chinese to be in my cell phone and know everything that's in there.
You know what's crazy? When I heard that, you always hear those things around there, and you're always like, okay, yeah, whatever.
Well, what part? The
Chinese situation with TikTok,
Right.
and when they were going to Congress, and I'll never forget, I see a video of Joe Rogan saying, "Listen, guys, I actually read the terms and conditions completely. They're tracking everything you do, everything that your contacts do. It seeps all the way through your phone, all the websites you visit, the apps you visit, everything. I went and I deleted it immediately. I haven't downloaded it ever again.
I think it's very smart.
Incredible.
Well, but you're already in there.
Probably.
I mean, that's it. Once you pegged, you're pegged.
But I was going to ask you a question going back to X. When the platform opened up again and X hit, right? Did you see like a surge in numbers immediately because you were no longer shadow banned?
As soon as I began posting and people knew I was back, I started gaining traction very quickly. There were a lot of people who missed me. A lot of people who had followed me previously. And as you know, it's also about putting up quality content, keeping people interesting, saying things that other people won't say or don't tell the truth about. So. Look, some people complain about Elon, not me. I think he's a great man. He's taken a huge risk. He has 9 federal investigations into his various businesses, all of which is BS, all of which is just harassment. He's turned out to be a true free speech advocate, and he's changed the whole face of American politics.
Yeah.
I mean, as Alex Jones likes to say, look, it's a beachhead. Yes, but it's an important beachhead.
Well, I think one of the biggest points you just put out there is the fact that he's taking a risk. I mean, he's really trying to go against the grain with everything here, in the sense of he's saying, I'm going to use my platform to speak.
Yeah.
Not everybody has the guts to do that.
He considers himself a free speech absolutist, and that was one of the reasons why he did that. Another point of his is you have a guy who's trying to get us to Mars, who's putting satellites in space, who's trying to get us to the moon, who's building electric cars, who's building somebody who, if you look at like traditional left to right, you'd be like, okay, he's more of a leftist, but he's not. He's not at all.
I actually think he's a libertarian. He's closest to a libertarian. I mean, he maybe has some social views that are a little bit more liberal, but generally speaking, I think that he's very pro freedom.
Yep.
And free speech, of course, is the cornerstone to free freedom. Right. Also, if you can't even imagine the threats on his life. Can you imagine how many threats are on his life?
He has a security detail.
He has a huge security detail.
My friend Tucker Carlson has the same issue. It's kind of interesting. I guess they thought at Fox that when they cut off Tucker Carlson that would snuff him. They had no idea that he would get 10 times the number of people who were seeing him on Fox are now seeing him on X.
But it goes to show you how the luster of the legacy media is kind of like taking a nosedive. They still have power and everything, but everyone's shifting to these social. Trump himself is doing a lot of podcasts, like the Regular Person podcast, and that's getting more traction because it's such breaking news than it would be him being on TV and typical.
Well, it's interesting because I've I've polled it. I've studied it in polling for political purposes. And of course, as you know, it used to be that most people got their news from network television affiliates.
Yes.
Then there was the rise of cable, so some of it shifted over to cable.
Correct.
Both of them now losing ground. 1/3 of voters now getting their information from OTT and CTV, getting it on their cell phone. And it's higher among Republicans, interestingly, than among all voters.
And that is such a great point you just brought up, because I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday. So, and where I was yesterday, they were talking about, no, the polls, but you just hit it right now. The fact of polls used to be something when people used to get all their information from network television. You only have the big kahunas. You had ABC, NBC,
the
CBS, big three. And then all of a sudden, I mean, polling that time, even when I was time in politics, you would do the polling. I think polling has just gone down. I think to your point is
there's a
different way of polling now.
Well, that's the reason. First of all, you have the rise of the cell phone. So in the beginning, polls were conducted. People went to your house. They knocked on your front door. Hi, I'm from the Gallup organization with a clipboard. Could I ask you some questions? Then polls were conducted by telephone. Well, most people had hard lines. Yeah. Okay, so polls were done now. Now you have cell phones, so you got to have some cell phone component of your polling. Yeah. And now, of course, some people have neither, and they're communicating entirely online. So a certain segment of your polling sample has to be done over the internet. But you have another problem. How many people want to tell a stranger how they're going to vote?
There you go. That was my next question.
Particularly if they're a Trump voter. They don't want to be they don't want to be harassed. They don't want to be targeted. And therefore, Donald Trump always underpolls by anywhere from 3 to 4%, meaning he's actually getting 3 to 4% more than is reflected in the poll, because many of his voters are not going to tell a stranger over the internet or over the cell phone who they're voting for.
Yeah. Because that part, and I just want to continue on that, because that was my whole conversation yesterday. Polls nowadays, I mean, people tell you, the polls. But how many? I talk to people that I know. I go, have you been called? Have you been called for a poll? How many people really sit there and really, to your point, are going to say the truth about a poll?
Well, not only that, but it's important for people to understand that a poll is only as good as its methodology. So you can cook a poll? For example, if you oversample Democrats and you undersample Republicans, you're going to get a skewed result. Yeah. The wording of the questions, the wording has to be completely neutral. The order of the questions, so you don't have what we call order bias. And before you ask the horse race, in this case, let's say, Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, you can't introduce any negative information in the poll before that and then take the poll head-to-head, the horse race, because you're going to affect your numbers. So not all polls are equal, and therefore you should never look at any one poll. Real Clear Politics does a great job of giving you an average. You can see the direction, and when 5 or 7 major pollsters are all showing essentially the same thing, well, then that's a trend.
What would you say is like your go-to poll? Like if you say, okay, I want to get like a good feeling on what's going on right now.
Most of the polls that I follow are private polls, but I think, for example, Mark Penn, who's a Democrat,
I like Mark.
does excellent work. A Harvard graduate, guy I've known for years. But I think he does it in conjunction with Harvard. Actually, I think he does excellent polling. Obviously, I have a personal favorite, Tony Fabrizio, lives in Fort Lauderdale, Republican. He's Trump's pollster, but he's also the pollster for the Wall Street Journal. Okay. I think he's also excellent.
So maybe I'm kind of reliving, 2016 a little bit, but I feel that there's still a much larger silent majority out there of people. I mean, I think that Trump's going to win the election. I don't see like a path for Kamala, even though the polls are kind of like side by side, and it could be gullible of me. But I kind of felt the same energy during the Clinton campaign. Maybe I'm mistaken. But do you think that silent majority is as big as it was during that campaign, or do you think that's kind of like simmered down a bit?
I also think that Trump will win the election, but I think he will win it very narrowly. I'm also not sure that he won't get more votes than Kamala Harris, but not ultimately be sworn in as president. This executive order that the government just renewed which says the government can decide that there's too much foreign interference in the election, and they essentially have the authority to void the results. I find that really disturbing.
Oh, wait. When did that happen?
Within the last week, you can look it up. It didn't get as much coverage as it did. But
could we elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. I mean, look, we went through 3 years of a Russian collusion hoax. You may remember that. I remember it very starkly because the FBI raided my home at 6 o'clock in the morning.
We all saw it on
TV.
TV.
CNN right out there. What a coincidence.
And they never found any evidence of either WikiLeaks collaboration or Russian collusion on my part. They charged me to squeeze me to get me to testify falsely against Trump, which we talked about on your show. So, I think you're going to have government interference in our election, but it's not going to be foreign government interference. It is our own government. You have several different things. I mean, you had the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, essentially say the other day that objecting to the election results on January 6th will not be tolerated. Well, we're a free society. I mean, if Trump loses in a fair election, then I'll say, okay, he lost. But I don't think that's going to happen. So yes, I think there's greater intensity among Trump supporters than there is among Kamala Harris's supporters. Most of Kamala Harris's supporters are not for her; they're just against Trump. In fact, they don't know all that much about her.
Right.
And when she ran for president herself, she didn't do very well.
That's what I think happened with Biden too. It wasn't a vote for Biden; it was a vote against Trump.
Well, but even Biden was a better known commodity.
Yeah,
you know,
but still. But on that point, what Eddie was telling you before you, really get down to that, what the hell is happening with all these assassination attempts? How is this? How I cannot fathom the fact of how can this happen in the United States? How can we explain and how people take this so easily, in the sense every time you wake up, oh, Trump almost got shot. Everybody's like, oh, okay, it's
crazy.
Trump.
Well, first of all, I'd say a couple things. First of all, I wrote a book in 2013, was a New York Times bestseller, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. And in that book, I document the Secret Service, which most definitely stood down on John Kennedy. There is no question they violated all their protocols and all their rules, which allowed for him to be killed. I'm working right now on a book on the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan because that whole story has never actually been told. There's a couple books written on it, but they're inadequate. Number of things that I know and that I can document that aren't in those books. So once again, I can make a very good case to you that there's government malfeasance and corruption in that attempt. In this particular case, I blame on the atmosphere that is whipped up largely by the Democrats, creating hysteria. Donald Trump is like Hitler. Donald Trump is going to cancel the Constitution. Chris Matthews. It's interesting. My wife and I sat next to Chris and his wife at Bethesda by the Sea Church in Palm Beach when Donald Trump was marrying Melania. He didn't seem to have any problem with Donald then, but now he says if Trump is elected, reporters are going to be put up against a wall and shot.
You know what's crazy?
No, they aren't. That's ridiculous.
It's crazy to me. And you know what's even worse? The Biden administration, I feel, has been less transparent than any other administration I've seen in my lifetime, at least since starting from George W. Bush. And I felt like when Trump was out there, I thought that he changed politics where it was like now every president is going to be an open book. I'm doing this today. I'm doing that tomorrow. I love his Twitter feed, although he did have some dumb things that he would say at times. With the Biden, it was like he was running away from reporters all the time. They're always running away from reporters and talking to the people. And during Trump's presidential run, when he was president, if he did not speak to a reporter, they would say there's an attack on the reporter, the democracy, and they would complain about it. This guy goes and doesn't do much, and nobody says anything.
Look, you got a situation in which Congressman Dan Goldman from Manhattan says Trump should be eliminated. The chief advisor to Kamala's campaign says that Trump should be terminated, so that others like him don't rise. I mean, there's no place. And Joe Biden himself said it's time to put Donald Trump in the bullseye. Yeah. I think all of those things have bred this atmosphere of hate and division.
But Roger, the thing is that for me, what's just crazy is the fact of how the media doesn't really elaborate on this.
No, in fact, I think they try to downplay it.
But that's what I'm saying.
I mean, there was a period where you could look up attempted assassination on Trump on Google and nothing popped up. You got information about the attempted assassination on President Truman, which took place when Puerto Rican nationalists attacked him back in the 40s. Now, they got caught on that and they changed it, but they wanted to get this out of the entire narrative as quickly as possible. And it's understandable because we still have too many questions and no answers as to how this could possibly have happened.
But you know,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, there was a moment after the debate that he had with Biden that everybody came out, and I was actually surprised at how hard the Democrats came out, seeing everybody saying that Biden did a terrible job. I didn't think that they were going to come that hard down.
Well, I think that was a little bit of strategic.
An inside job.
That's just my opinion.
No, I think you're right. Look, I think Joe Biden was an accidental president. They needed somebody to stop Bernie Sanders because they knew he was a general election loser. They tried to prop up Kamala Harris. It didn't work. They tried to prop up Pete Buttigieg. That didn't work. They tried to prop up Cory Booker. When I say they, I'm speaking of the Obamas, who are the de facto leaders and the most influential people in the 100%. Democrat Party.
They were over the Clintons already, right?
Well, they still have some influence, but believe me, the Obamas hate the Clintons more than I do. So, so they ended up saying, all right, we'll take Joe because he's controllable. We got the goods on Joe. We know everything about Joe. He's in our White House. They certainly knew what Hunter was doing. So they took Joe with the understanding that Joe would be a one-term president. The problem was Joe has a very high opinion of himself. He's a very stubborn guy. I mean, I followed him since he was elected at 29 years old to the U.S. Senate. Look at that press conference that he holds immediately after the special counsel announces that he, too, according to them, illegally held on to classified and top secret documents. I shouldn't say too because the president's entitled to keep documents, but the vice president and a U.S. senator is not. Go look at his press conference. Firstly, he's very angry. But he says, there's nobody in the country better qualified to be president than me. Well, I question that. And then he goes on to say, who could do what I have done, such as record inflation, such as opening the border and having, who knows, 15 million people. But he really believes that he's a great president. And he had every intention of running. And so I think they had to force him out. He was forced out, and he's not happy about it.
So my point to that was, after that debate, everyone was getting on the Democrats, and they were probably on Trump, that he did a good job, etc. And then he had the first assassination attempt. And I felt like all the media was kind of like together for a moment, talking about like, hey, we feel bad for Trump, we shouldn't be talking. And it lasted like 3 days, and it just withered away.
I don't know what stations you were watching.
Yeah, I saw it a little differently. So look, I think CNN and the media was
one or two just for 24 hours. Yeah. Okay, it really wasn't that. I felt
like people were.
Some people even said, "Oh, that's just glass," and he cut himself when he was going down.
That was really problematic.
One thing that I just say, this is just me. Be whatever you are, Democrat, Republican, Independent. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable for anybody to shoot any type of try to assassinate any president from any party. It's just unacceptable, and it's unacceptable for any news outlet not to report it as it is. It was an attempted murder on a sitting president. Yeah. So to your question, but it's just crazy to me how they can even say that. It's just crazy. You have to take it seriously.
I would say two things. One, I think CNN was kind of complicit in getting Joe off stage. Joe was refusing to go. He was just stubbornly refusing to go. Barack Obama went to George Clooney and said, send this into, not the other way around. Right. We're not that stupid, sorry. He cut off the Hollywood money. He cut off the big donor money. He lined up Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries. They started looking at their polling, seeing that Biden was going to take down senators and congressmen with him.
That's what it was.
That got them on board.
That's their
so Joe gets forced out.
Yeah.
And if he has to belly flop in a debate to do it, well, that was the price they paid. So it wasn't so much that they were propping up Trump as they were just in a hurry to get rid of Joe. But what you say is even more offensive. Remember, Alex Jones got sued for what? Claiming that nobody was killed at Sandy Hook? Okay. I don't agree with that. Yeah. But he got sued for that successfully. There are thousands of people right now on X who say there was no assassination attempt on Trump in Butler. This whole thing was fraudulent. There were no bullets fired, and Roger Stone ran the whole thing. So can I sue them? Because if the Alex Jones standard is true, the answer is yes. My family, my kids, they're getting harassed now because people say, oh, yeah, there was no assassination. Tell that to the family of Corey Comparatori, the firefighter who took one in the head, shielding his wife and his daughter, and tell me no bullets were fired. I call these people assassination deniers, and it's outrageous. It's outrageous.
That's crazy. It really is. I mean, how can anybody not see what they saw? But again, that's where we're at. Here we go. Then comes now the golf course situation. This is another one that I just can't believe. The man was camping out there for 12 days.
And they say that both guys were in BlackRock commercials.
Right.
Which I don't know what that leads to, but that's
if that's true, that I think that's extraordinarily suspicious. But how did he fly from Hawaii to West Palm Beach? Oh, I know. He's not on the TSA's secret domestic terrorist watch list like former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. They put her on the list after she criticized Kamala Harris on television. Yes, why isn't this guy on that list? Then there's his time in Ukraine. Well, if he was in Ukraine, either trying to recruit mercenaries or helping with the war effort, then he is known to our federal officials.
Yeah, 100%. Apparently, he has pictures of like his hair dyed with half Ukraine colors, and he was out there. That's incredible. I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts and how much of an impact is it really going to have? I think it's big. Again, I see things maybe differently than you guys have, that you guys have been in this business. But when Kennedy pushed his support,
I think this is huge. So let's notice what's happening here. We have a realignment. Dick Cheney, remember him, the war criminal, the guy who lied us into a war in which tens of thousands of Americans died and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis died because he said that Iraq was responsible for 9/11. They weren't. And that they had nuclear weapons. They didn't. He and his daughter and the supporter, the two son and daughter of John McCain, they're now supporting Kamala. But Robert F. Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, for example, are now supporting Trump. This is the realignment. I think you have a realignment going on in the country. And under Donald Trump, the Republican Party is becoming the party of common sense, the party of the middle class, the party of the working people. And now I think bringing the Kennedy agenda in terms of health freedom, in terms of cleaning up what's in our food. I started reading the labels of the stuff that I was eating, and I've stopped eating it.
He's sued the federal government. God knows how many times.
I've known him for some time. We're not close friends, but I know him. I admire him. We met him once in a conference. I like him a lot. I think he has huge courage.
So here's my question, Roger. If that's happening, what happens now with the fact that I'm okay? All right. So Kennedy supporting Trump. What about the sense that some of these courts are not letting him drop his name off the ballot?
It's ironic because of the same courts are trying to keep him from being on the ballot. Correct. In other words, look.
But is that? I got it. But here's my question: is that going to affect? I think it could. I think it could. I think it. It could be a very close situation, and those votes could, mean something. Does he go to these states and try and campaign hard and say, listen, don't vote for me there?
Well, first of all, I think we have to recognize that the election is going to come down to probably 6 states and about 60 counties. Everything else, you can accurately predict what's going to happen. So if you look at those 6 states right now, I think he's only still on the ballot in 1, I believe. I could be wrong about that. He got moved in Michigan where we thought that he would. The Supreme Court took him off the ballot. It looked for a while like he would still be stuck on the ballot.
Yeah.
But the Democrats spent literally tens of millions of dollars to keep him off the ballot. Now they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to keep him on the ballot. I don't think it's going to make it. I don't think it's good. In the end, I don't think he makes any difference. But it does pinpoint where he needs to spend his time and his energy, and he's going to do that. And I think his agenda is a great TV commercial that he just put out today that I showed on my own show this morning. His agenda about cleaning up our food and cleaning up the process by which we approve prescription drugs, in which we pull back from the brink of war. He's got a great piece, op-ed piece in The Hill today with Donald Trump Jr. About how to avoid war with Russia, which we are hurtling towards. I mean, recognize, while we were all paying attention to what was going on at the golf course in West Palm Beach, our Secretary of State told NATO, yes, you can use American missiles that we gave you for long-range missiles for attacks deep inside Russia. Vladimir Putin, of whom I am no fan, sorry. I mean, my family was mowed down by Russian tanks in Budapest in 1956. So when you call me a Russian sympathizer, that's really obnoxious. But he's made it clear that that's a line in the sand.
He's always made it clear.
So we could be careening towards a nuclear war. And will the current regime start a war to stop Donald Trump from getting to the White House? Yeah, if they need to, I'm afraid they will. I mean, we're looking at thermonuclear war.
So I feel that we are living in a crazy time. I mean, I haven't seen this in my lifetime. I mean, I don't know about you compare it to anything else, but I mean, this is really something that for me, it's something that when people sit down and chat, we have gotten to, and you and I were talking about this before we started. There's not conversational pieces anymore where people can really just maybe agree to disagree or something like that. This is just any conversation. Either you're in a group on here or you're a group over here. There's not a conversation of, like, let's say there was a Democrat that you can say, oh, I really, can see a lot with that Democrat, or there's a Democrat I can really see with that Republican. A Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan situation that, would happen. And we were talking about Maurice and the whole thing, how Maurice was, a Democrat, but Maurice would vote for what was the correct thing to do.
We speak of Maurice Ferré, one of the greatest statesmen I've ever known. He was the mayor of Miami. He was a visionary. He was a truly great man, well beyond partisan politics, respected by both Republicans and Democrats, just the very best. And I supported him in everything he did, even though I was a Republican, because I just liked him. I liked the way he thought. He was a man of enormous integrity.
Yeah. But that's my biggest point, because that's what we're talking
Those
about.
Days don't exist anymore.
Those days don't exist anymore. I don't understand it. I mean, again, Maurice was a Democrat. He was more appointed by Republican presidents and governors than he was even by Democrats. He was appointed to Secretary of Transportation here in Florida. He was considered for Secretary of Transportation as well.
Ronald Reagan looked at him. Rick Scott appointed him.
So those conversations are gone now. I mean, when you sit down with a group of friends, I mean, literally, in my circle of friends, which is a pretty big one, you're either like, don't talk about that because the night's going to go wrong. So it usually wasn't like that. You could have a intellectual, a civil conversation. That's what we have gotten. People doing
friends during election season.
But it didn't used to be. It did not used to be that way. So I mean, I think two things contributed to this. First of all, the Republicans should never have tried to impeach Bill Clinton for sexual shenanigans, and that didn't rise to the level of impeachment. Now, I think he could have been impeached for selling military secrets to the Chinese, but that's not the charge they brought. Right. I was against that. I wrote against it in the Washington Times at the time. My Republican friends were mad at me, saying, "Oh, the Clintons have got to go." I said, "Well, then find something legitimate, because this isn't legitimate." That was the beginning. That was the beginning. But there was a time that most of the well-known Democrat political consultants in the business did what I did. We were friends. We ate together. We drank together. We teased each other. Sometimes they beat us. Sometimes we beat them. When they beat you, you say, okay, I'll get you next time. They didn't try to put you in jail when you lost the election. Right. But this weaponization of the criminal justice system, which really begins under Barack Obama and is pointed initially at Donald Trump and everyone around him, that is the manifestation of this entire attitude that Republicans and Democrats can't get along, which we have to get back to that civility.
Yeah, I agree.
But also it has a lot to do, candidly, with the changes in the Democrat Party. Moderate Democrat is an oxymoron today. There are no moderate Democrats.
Yeah, that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No. Will there? Do you think that maybe, and this is a conversation I have with some other people, do you think it's going to be that people want to say, okay, once this whole era is gone of like the Trump era, the Biden, Clinton, Obama era, the new generation is coming up in politics, will that make a difference of them coming out together? I mean, is it just such a big thing that all this group of, to Trump's terms, the swamp and this and that hate the guy, or then, the Democrats that think that he's the worst thing that can happen to this country? Do they have to surpass all this to then all of a sudden the new generation is coming up, maybe make a kumbaya?
I think what will heal our politics is when life is better for everyone, when there is prosperity for everyone, when there are job opportunities for everyone, when there's affordable housing for everyone, when the food is safer to eat for everyone. I think that's when we can get back together. I think that if he is successful, then I think the rancor and the hatred will get turned away. No, he's not going to arrest reporters and put them against the wall and shoot them. No, he's not going to suspend the Constitution. No, he's not going to sign a federal abortion ban. No, he's not going to deny women birth control. These are lies. So
that sounds like all Project 2025 stuff. That's
true.
Said we don't want nothing to do with that multiple times already.
Well, I mean, this is I find that hit to be really stupid. The Heritage Foundation is a very conservative think tank, and they produced their own agenda. Yes, there are some people who worked for Donald Trump who worked on that, but he's made it very clear that's not my agenda. My agenda is Agenda 47, which is a reflection of the Republican Party platform adopted in Milwaukee. But it'd be the same thing as me saying, oh no, the Harris-Walsh platform isn't the one they adopted at their convention. It's the Communist Party platform over here. The U.S. Communist Party has a platform. Well, she would say, that's not my platform. Well, Trump says Project 2025 is not his platform. Yeah. There's a few good things in there, but a lot of stuff in there, I'm a conservative. A lot of things in there I don't like.
Yeah. And that's normal. I mean, at the end of the day, we should be able to talk about these things, but they try to pin it on him as a political tool. And then I saw people creating GIFs, and in the comments, they would just upload that GIF, and it'll be like, Project 2025, which, if you think about it, it's actually smart on the Democrats' end, because people are reading comments, and they're seeing all those things come up, and, automatically they associate themselves to it. I was going to ask you.
It's interesting, because I see it another way. In other words, I think messaging is best when people can understand from the beginning what you're talking about. So for you to be against Project 2025, you got to go look it up and see what it is, and it's got 900 pages and so on. When I wrote my very first book, my publisher is a very smart guy. I think then it was about the Kennedy assassination, and I think I had some hokey name like, Destiny in Dallas or something. The guy said, no. People need to know from the title of your book what the book's about. The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. Now I know exactly what the book is like. So if you want to attack Donald Trump for wanting to cut taxes, then attack him for wanting to cut taxes. But the idea that he wants to cut taxes for billionaires, no, he always cut taxes across the board, and those who got the greatest tax reduction made between $15,000 and $50,000 a year. Those are not millionaires. Yeah. The average millionaire got a 6% reduction in their taxes.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody was happier back then, and there's no denying of, the economy was better when he was in power and when he was our president. I was going to ask you, do you think JD Vance was his best option? I kind of want to have your own personal opinion on that.
I like JD Vance. I think he was the best option of those available. I like Marco Rubio. I like him a lot. He's been very good to my family. His politics are a little different than mine, but I think he could have been a great candidate. But the problem is that the Electoral College really doesn't prohibit, but it's problematic to have a candidate for president and vice president from the same state. You can do it, but you have to forfeit the Electoral College votes for Florida in the Electoral College, which we could not afford to do. Now, some are.
Why is that like that?
Because that's the way the Founding Fathers wrote it. All right. The problem here, of course, is it soluble? Sure. Between the election, let's say that he had run with Marco, which would have been fine with me. I like Marco. Let's say he had run with Marco and they won. Well, then Marco could change his legal residence from Florida to Nevada, where he lived for some time, before the Electoral College votes. But I wouldn't want to spend an entire campaign trying to explain that to people. Correct. So technically, it was problematic. There were other candidates for vice president that I didn't like as much. Tim Scott, would not have been my choice. A big supporter of the war in Ukraine. Doug Burgum, a man who made his fortune by selling a software company to his best friend Bill Gates, was not my candidate. So of those available choices, I like JD Vance because he's self-made. The guy came from nothing, and they attacked him because he went to Yale. No, he earned his way to Yale. He's not a legacy student at Yale.
I have two guys that I want to get your personal opinion on. Me as a younger, person, I personally like a lot Brian Donald.
I like
him a lot.
I like Byron's Donalds a lot.
I know he doesn't have maybe as much popularity as other people, and I like Vivek. Is it the way he speaks or the way he comes off to me? But I like he can get a message across to me relatively easily. I want to get your personal opinion on those two.
I like Byron Donalds a lot. He's actually my personal favorite in the next race for governor. That's who I'd like to see run. I hope he runs. That's who I would support. I think it's going to be a big field in Florida. There's other good people. I really like Jimmy Petronis, who's the state CFO. I could also support him. But I like him a lot, and I think he's a great communicator. I mean, he really is. Vivek is very, very articulate. He's very, very smooth, maybe a little too smooth for me. And he just showed up recently, so I like to see him stick around. But were he, for example, to go into a Trump cabinet
100%.
and do a great job, then he'd be a presidential candidate.
100%. Yeah. And that part, yeah.
So I was very happy when Trump announced that Robert F. Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard would both serve on his transition team. I think that's going to give you a broader reach there.
Yeah. Going back to that, I think I don't even want to keep talking about the media, but I think if Robert F. Kennedy would have gone towards the Democratic Party, they would have blown that up so much. He went towards the Republican Party with Trump, and you didn't really hear much about it.
Well, what they did to him, though, is outrageous. I mean, look, he's from one of the most famous Democrat families in the country, a dynasty. His father,
so the family went and supported Joe anyway.
I mean, yes, but let's recognize John F. Kennedy was an ardent anti-communist. He cut taxes. He insisted on a silver-backed dollar. He distrusted the intelligence agencies because they lied to him about the Bay of Pigs and they lied to him about the Cuban Missile Crisis. If he were alive today, John F. Kennedy would be a Republican. He's certainly a conservative Democrat.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, he wanted to dissolve the intelligence agencies.
Yes, because they had lied to him about the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Right. And they were not too nice to him and his family either. I mean,
So, but I mean, so you got a bunch of Kennedy. Some of his siblings have been critical. A number, by the way, of his cousins are supporting him. But the Democrat Party made it impossible for him to compete. So they canceled the Iowa caucuses. He couldn't compete there. They threatened to cancel the New Hampshire primary, but the New Hampshire primary is required by law. So they stripped New Hampshire of the delegates, and they took Biden's name off the ballot. So he would be competing against no one. Then they told him if he competed in Georgia that he'd be ineligible to be on the ballot in the states after Georgia. So they kneecapped him the same way that Hillary kneecapped Bernie Sanders. Okay, so now he decides to run as an independent, which is extraordinarily difficult because the ballot access laws to get your name on the ballot, well, they're written by Republicans and Democrats working together to make it as hard as possible because they don't want competition from anybody. But the Democrats still spent tens of millions of dollars to keep him off the ballot. This is his own party, the party where his father and his brother are still revered. So I can understand why he is now switched his support to Donald Trump.
Just curious, I don't know how often you still talk to people from the other side, Democrats?
Occasionally.
Considering everything that's gone on the last 3.5 years, for me, it's hard to believe that some people would want to continue that route. Are there Democrat friends of yours that say, listen, this is my job and I kind of have to support it, but truthfully, I think for the country, the best thing would be Trump? Is there any type of sentiment like that out there?
Among Democrat professionals, I have a few friends who say to me, the party's gone too far over the edge. I can't find work because I don't support a lot of these crazy policies. But I think to work in the Democrat Party, you have to be woke now. The moderate
rules.
They're the new rules, and they dominate the party and therefore they dominate the party's money. Among rank and file Democrats, absolutely, people who still consider themselves, by heritage, by family custom to be Democrats, they're not at home in this Democrat Party today. It's not a centrist party anymore. Bill Clinton could not get nominated in today's Democrat Party.
That's what I say. But because Clinton was more of a moderate Democrat.
Correct.
Yeah.
And how do you think, we got to this point with them going that far?
Because I think that the truth,
like social issues or cultural.
No. I think that it is because we have a ruling, unelected elite in this country that controls the media, and they control the government as well. And it is their agenda. They're the ones who took over the Democrat Party. They also look. I can't make excuses for my own party. Under the Bushes, we became part of the war party. Bush, Cheney, McCain. So they got control of both parties. Donald Trump kind of comes along, and they don't take him seriously in the beginning. They think he's a cartoon character. He's some kind of caricature. They have no idea that the American people are just fed up with all institutions, government, Republicans, Democrats, Congress.
But for the have to happen in order to
But for the first time, they're also fed up with the media because they know they're being lied to. And that's what, and a free and unfettered internet allows for the rise of a Donald Trump.
I think this is why all these things have submerged with all the podcasts and all the different news outlets now, because people cannot trust the media anymore. So then now everybody's, uncovering, and everybody's talking about that. You see all these people, the Rogans, the to your point, the Megyn Kellys of the world. All these people have made it. They went from Fox to NBC. From NBC, now Megyn Kelly has her own podcast too. It's doing awesome. Her, Tucker. All these are people that, are just flourishing right now that people are listening to because they don't want to listen, and they have more freedom. Because even whatever affiliation you have with, Fox, MSNBC, or whatever, they feel they can speak a little bit better now because they're not being so controlled in their environment.
Yes, but let me point out, it was only today that Hillary Clinton said that people should be put in jail for posting misinformation. That's a big problem. Who is she to say what is misinformation? She's saying, in other words, anyone who disagrees with what you think should be.
That's crazy.
She says they should be civilly and criminally prosecuted, which means she's getting soft because now she's just threatening to put you in the jail. In the old days, she'd have you killed. Because I'm sorry, there's nobody who happens to know 58 people who just happen to commit suicide.
That's another podcast. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, but you know what? That brings me back to a conversation that Elon Musk had during the interview with Don Lemon. And Don Lemon saying, well, listen, they're talking about hateful speech in the platform. You need to reduce it.
Yeah.
He goes, no, that is censorship. And Don Lemon continues to hammering over and over. And he goes, listen, I go by the country's laws. If you're saying something illegal, then yeah. He goes, well, you're not taking down child pornography. He goes, yeah, we are. That's illegal. He goes, well, you just love censorship. He goes, no, I don't. He goes, you love it so much you can taste it. So these guys are grabbing at straws. In Brazil, they told them the same thing.
Unbelievable.
Australia, they were saying the same thing.
That's crazy.
They were putting people in jail. Was it France or Italy? They were putting people in jail.
In France.
France.
They were putting people in jail.
Also in Britain.
Yeah.
You can be in Ireland. You can be arrested for saying something the government doesn't agree with.
Kamala has come out and said that it is a privilege to be on social media and have that type of power. And it's not a privilege; it's a right. A right.
It's a First Amendment right.
So they're going to come. That's another problem that we don't see coming. If she comes and she continues the next 4 years, she's going to come and go after Elon Musk. 100,000.
Of course, they're already doing that. Look, even those I referred to earlier, the assassination deniers, the people who say that nobody got shot, this is all fraud. I don't think they should be taken down from X. Because I have to believe that most people read that and say that's crazy. But I'm not suggesting that they should be censored or that they should be prosecuted for saying crazy things.
I mean, let me tell you again, if that happens, I mean, this is the beginning of I don't know what, because at the end of the day, you're taking away everything that, everything stands here for free speech. And the fact that you could usually stand anywhere and speak your mind and say whatever you thought. Now you're going to get back to the fact of now you got to be a little bit, elusive and say, let me take a step back. You're thinking about something. Should I say it? Should I not say it? Are they going to come knocking on my door? You know what I'm saying? Or are they going to do that? And then you say, do I need this in my life? These are the things that happen that a lot of people, are going to say and not understanding, because I feel that some of these people do not vote their head. They don't vote for what they're thinking. They vote the emotion that's going on right now. They'll vote for anything that, as you said, the press can go ahead and just misconstrued and say, this is the way it should be, this is not the way it should be. I mean, every time I hear the whole situation with the abortion thing, I say to people, take it upon yourself and read about it, think about it, talk about it, look into your research, do your own research before you even start thinking about something that you don't know what anybody's talking about.
But the problem is people make decisions on the basis of information that's false. No, I'm sorry, but 9 states do not put any restriction on the time of abortion, and therefore a child could be aborted after birth. And yes, there are 10,000 8th or 9th month abortions in the country every year. So the idea that there are no late-term abortions is just not true. Donald Trump wants to outlaw IVF. No, actually, when the Alabama legislature was thinking of doing that, he got on the phone and started calling individual Republican legislators to back them off and make sure it didn't happen. Yep. No, he's not going to limit your access to birth control. Just because Kamala Harris says that or Tim Walz says that doesn't make it true.
Right. But that's what I said. You got to do the research on your own. You got to read upon it.
You know what they say? Usually Republicans are like low info voters, low information voters, which I kind of feel like sometimes it's the other way around,
that they're not getting the correct information.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's the other way around, because like I feel like the Democrats, for whatever reason, even my brother, who I love very much, he's
shout out to the man.
He lives in Canada and everything. Sometimes, and he puts his points out there, but sometimes I'm like, man, like.
But that's okay.
Really, like you can.
But I get it.
Really believe and fuck with that.
But again, that's okay for him to put his points, and you go ahead and put your points, and you discuss them. But that's what I keep on saying. I mean, everybody here on Instagram, everything, they just see something about Trump, all this, or they see something about Kamala, all that. You gotta. I like to go ahead and make an argument on stuff that I read about, how I researched it, and this is my view now. Yeah. So you gotta respect it. But that's how I feel you have to vote in that same sense.
Do you think Trump is making a mistake not taking a third debate? I know he said that, voting.
Well, we haven't done a second one.
No, we did a second one technically for the presidential run.
Well, but with Kamala, there's only been one.
Yeah, yes, I do, and here's why. What media outlet do you think that she would agree to appear for that would run an honest debate?
She'll probably. The only one that I think she would agree upon would be MSNBC.
Which clearly Trump is not going to do. Correct. Having been mugged once, he's not going to come and get mugged again. So. And frankly, I don't even trust Fox. So I don't think there is I don't think there is realistically any forum where they would both agree, which is unfortunate. Yeah. But you can't blame him given this last experience.
Yeah. And because even the first one, I think it was just really a setup. The first one was a setup for this one. So I don't think to that point, I agree.
But isn't it interesting that ever since he did the "You Be in Jail" and the whole crowd went wild last time, they don't want audiences in the
right
anymore. No. They try to favor them so much.
Brings in. So let me bring this back home a little bit over here. So Florida, part of Florida, you feel Florida go red.
Yes, but closer than expected because you have 2 constitutional amendments on the ballot here, and I think they have a tendency to bring out a little different
marijuana.
Yes,
right.
Which of course President Trump has supported Amendment 3.
Yeah,
it needs 60%. By the way, you're looking at the guy who wrote the constitutional amendment that requires 60% that we passed back in the 90s. So I think those 2 are going to bring out a little different mix of voters. But yes, in the end, I think President Trump wins the state.
You have a Richard Nixon bond?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And just this weekend, there was they found another Watergate era tape, which nobody ever noticed. It was page 1 of the New York Times.
By the way,
Richard Nixon's quote is saying, pot isn't particularly bad. You can hear him say it.
By the way,
particularly dangerous, he says.
I want to go back to the Florida thing, but now that you say that, by the way, you look at Richard Nixon Watergate. This is nothing compared. I mean,
small potatoes.
Potatoes for the love of the guy. Listen to the tape. My question is, because of that, what you're just talking about, and I think this is very important, at least for our residents here, and especially for a lot of people from the Miami listeners. How do you feel that, for the governor's race with DeSantis, right? Dade County is usually a Democratic county. It went red last time for DeSantis. I don't know how Dade County is going to turn out this time. I think, and that I tell you that because I see there's a lot of congressional people that could be maybe in a little pickle here with that situation.
Let me say a couple things. First of all, I'm supporting Amendment 3.
Okay.
And the reason I'm doing that is because when my father was dying of cancer, he lived in New York. He had no appetite. He had horrific pain. The opioids they were giving him were doing nothing other than constipating him and making him more depressed. And my sister suggested, look, why don't we get him some cannabis? Let's get him some pot. And it helped. He put weight back on. It helped him deal with the pain. We have medical marijuana in Florida, thanks really to the courage of John Morgan, more than anyone else. We had to do it by constitutional amendment because the legislature would never, ever pass it, nor would they put it on the ballot. But here's the problem. The program itself is restrictive, it's bureaucratic, it's expensive, it's cumbersome. You can only get it for a limited, a very specific list of illnesses. So if you have depression or PTSD or lower back pain, no, I'm sorry, you're not eligible. So the current system, as passed by the Republicans in the legislature and signed into law by Rick Scott, doesn't work. That's why I'm for Amendment 3, so people have broader access to medicine. And I think it is far less dangerous than opioids. And it's crazy to have something be legal in Florida under state law, but illegal under federal law.
True.
And I also want it regulated because I want to make sure that the marijuana people do buy is not laced with fentanyl. Yeah. So I'm strongly for Amendment 3.
And you can take more tax dollars off
now to go to your question, and on Amendment 4, it's a little difficult. 6 weeks to me, I'm pro-life, but that's not reasonable. Abortion right up to the 8th and 9th month, that's even more unreasonable to me. So I will be voting no. In your case, I still make a case that had we not had a hurricane in the 3 weeks before the 2022 election, that the election would have been much closer. I still think DeSantis would have won comfortably, but there's a big difference between 5 points and 22 points. Charlie Crist, who's a master politician, you know that joke, a Democrat, Republican, and an independent walk into a bar, and the bartender says, "Hi, Charlie, how you doing?" Charlie Crist was a master at kind of the free media coverage, but he was frozen out those last 3 weeks when everything you saw was Ron DeSantis' strong leadership, where he did do a good job on our recovery from the hurricane. That allowed him to dominate the media, and I think that contributed mightily to the big victory. So Miami-Dade County, which we won, not just won, but won comfortably, I think will be competitive again. I don't know that it goes red. I think it is still by registration and history a blue county. Yeah. So I think Florida overall is going to be much closer because of the 2 constitutional amendments and who they bring out. And also because the state naturally, I don't care what people said, it's not a red state, it's not a blue state, it's still a purple state.
Yeah, I agree.
It is 100%.
Hey, I wanted to go to something a little bit more lighthearted. And do you think it was like done on purpose, or why would someone do that? I mean, maybe they were messing around, which it was cool. But you have Biden going out, I think it was in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. He's talking to a Trump voter, and he signs the hat, gives it the hat, and then puts the hat on. Okay. Well, I feel like there was more behind that message to his party than there ever was, but maybe I'm overthinking.
No, actually, I think you're right. He also, minutes later, he poses with a picture of about 10 or 12 young kids that are all wearing Trump T-shirts, and he's smiling. He knows exactly what he's doing. Yeah. Joe Biden is pissed. He's pissed that they forced him out. He's very angry. So it's his message to them. You think you're going to get rid of me so easily? Not so easily. And notice he carries he's seen at the top of the stairs on Air Force One, he's got the red hat in his hands. He's sending a message. This guy's been in politics a long, long time.
So he's not that sleepy.
No. Well, I think he has his lucid moments. And in his lucid moments, he's angry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. I would be super pissed.
Well, his family was very, very upset about him saying he was not going to drop out.
Well, and let's face it, him putting on the hat really in the middle of the news cycle in which she's trying to benefit, claiming a debate win. I think he screwed up her messaging very badly.
And Trump in the debate did say something. He says, "Well, Joe Biden hates you anyways, you know."
And notice there was no response to that.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of.
And he said, and he did say, I feel sorry for the guy. Yeah. What they did to him.
Well, he won 17. He got 71% of the vote, and 17 million people voted to make him the nominee. How many voted for her again?
No, that's
that would
crazy.
be
That's
none.
Another crazy. And again, here I go again with the fact of
democracy.
Yeah, but again, I mean, you think about the sense again, Republican, Democrat. There has to be a process. There has to be a process.
All right, there was another thing that I saw online that was interesting to me. And
what did you see online that was interesting to you?
It was an influencer that received a influencer brief to be paid in order to promote negative Trump talking points and promote positive talking points for Kamala. Okay, so I feel like I don't know if both campaigns, but Democratic campaign does a very, very good job at leveraging influencers and putting information out there. Hence, Taylor Swift comes out right after the debate immediately and posts that to 300 million followers. Okay. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, interestingly enough, a YouGov Yahoo poll showed that the Taylor Swift endorsement may have actually marginally done more damage than good. First of all, the vast majority of voters said it made no difference to them whatsoever, and then a slight plurality said they were less likely now to vote for Kamala than they were.
Did anybody have a doubt?
Well,
did anybody have a doubt that she was I personally feel artists like that should stay out of these things, me personally, but I mean, I never had a doubt that she was going to come out and support.
Well, if you notice, her text her copy and her caption was a little bit different this time. Towards the end, she said, go and do your research and pick, whoever it is you think is best for you. But I think people know that maybe they're leaning towards one party, in this case, the Democratic Party, but they know that, maybe it's not the best choice.
You know how sometimes they say father knows best? Let's say her father knew best, because I saw a report that when her father was talking to her, I think not in this election, I think when she was going to support whoever was running against Senator Blackburn in Tennessee, and he said, "Stay out of that. Yeah. There's no." And then she was saying, "No, I can't." Which, okay, she was trying to stand up for the right thing. But again, I don't think she did her full research on
Look, she's entitled to support anyone she wants, and if you are in the entertainment industry, say my friend Robert Davi, the actor. I mean, he's been a very strong and articulate supporter of Trump. He writes occasionally for Breitbart. He's got a great music video now. He sings this country. Again, it makes it harder for him to find parts. It makes it harder for him to find work.
That's so crazy.
But if you're in the entertainment industry, you have the right to support a candidate if you want. The mistake is assuming that because Taylor Swift has endorsed Kamala Harris, that's going to move a huge number of votes. First of all, most of the people that love her, they're entitled to. Most of them aren't registered to vote, and they're not interested in politics. And again, this Yahoo poll showed that of those it affected, which was less than 50%, I think it was less than 30%, said it had any effect on them. It was a negative net impression.
So I have a question for you that stems from our first interview. In our first interview, you made a prediction that wasn't that far off, but you said that you feel Michelle Obama was going to jump into the race. Right?
It was a three-part prediction. Part one, I said Joe Biden would not be the Democrat nominee.
Correct.
I'm now 1-4-3. Secondarily, I predicted that Kamala Harris would briefly become president. I could still be right. We don't know.
Correct.
Okay. And then thirdly, yes, I thought their strongest candidate was Michelle Obama. Now, I never, and I talked about this in a number of places, I never said she wanted to run for president. Right. I never said she was planning to run for president. I did believe that they would draft her because they could make the case to her that she was their strongest candidate against Trump. And if Trump was still leading, we need somebody who can beat Trump, and only you can beat Trump.
Yeah.
And I think this explains the lag between the time that Biden got out and Harris got in, but she did not get an immediate endorsement from Barack Obama. It was, a week, almost 10 days later. I think in that period, I believe, and I'm not an intimate of the Obamas by any means, but I think the case was being made the last time to Michelle Obama that she would have been their strongest candidate, and she would have been a very strong candidate had she run.
I would have been very worried if Michelle Obama would have come in. I mean, me and Manny were talking about it. We're like, look at this. Roger predicted this. And I thought it was going to happen. I think they're going to bring in her in, despite the situation that they had on board. But I think it maybe would have ruffled too many feathers because she never got a delegate vote. She wasn't even part of that campaign, etc.
But with Joe Biden now going
Or
around,
that's what's happening with.
But she's kind of still tied to his hip, so it's an easier sell, I think, to the Democratic Party.
look, with Joe Biden running around wearing Trump hats, they still may force him out of office under the 25th Amendment, which is how I think they got him out of the race.
Right. Yeah,
they threatened to remove him.
Well, because remember, before even that, how many signatures were already? People have said like, he needs to drop out.
Well,
you had so many senators already, and then they took that list to him and go, look, this is all we need.
Well, let's remember the process. So under the 25th Amendment, if a majority of the cabinet and the vice president want you removed, you're removed. You, as the president, have the right to appeal that to Congress. So they went to him and they said, we've got a majority of the cabinet. We clearly have the vice president. And he said, okay, well, I'll fight it in the Congress. And Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi said, no, you won't, because you don't have the votes. We have the votes. And I think that's how they got him out of the race.
They just dried up the money, too.
Yes,
donations coming in. So
yes.
that was very.
But he did not want to be the only president other than Richard Nixon to be forced from office, and therefore he dropped his bid. What stops them from going back to him now, saying, "Look, we need to elevate her to the presidency in order to win this election. Therefore, Joe, you're not in your right mind because you're running around wearing a Trump hat.
Right?
You have to go." I think that's entirely possible. It's
we need
we'll
to
know.
swear her in for the remaining days.
Yeah, and look, I also believe that John Kennedy was killed with the acquiescence of elements of the government. I think there are elements of the government involved in these two assassination attempts. I think that's what we're ultimately going to learn. What would stop them from killing another president? I mean, I don't wish that on him. I'm not predicting that will happen. I have no knowledge, but I think anything's possible in this grab for power. Then she would become president. Plus, she gets a state funeral and all of the laudatory publicity that would. So I think anything is possible.
Yeah, it's incredible to me that Trump was in New York for 9/11 the other day, and they were all together with
everybody.
Bloomberg.
They were all there.
And everyone was cheering for Trump right in front of them.
Yeah,
in New York.
Yeah, I felt a little bit. I was watching that on. I was watching that on Instagram. Like, damn, that's when you hear all those people screaming, "We need you, we need you," and everybody's just like this, But everybody.
Well, I mean, Trump is a phenomenon. Look, I worked for Ronald Reagan in 3 campaigns. He was very, very popular. He couldn't get 45,000 people to go to the Jersey Shore in Wildwood for a rally. Not a chance.
No,
not a chance. Or huge crowds in the Bronx. I mean, he's a phenomenon unto himself.
So, keeping on that one, do you see any surprise in any place? We know what everybody's talking about. I sit down, I watch the news every day. This one says there's the path.
What is it? October surprises they call it?
Well, this is the path.
Well, the October surprise could be Kamala becoming president. Yeah, that could be the October surprise.
For this one, path to victory to that one. They were showing that there's a quicker path to victory for Trump than there is for Kamala. And then even CNN threw out something there that I saw yesterday talking about that it's not as easy for her. That's a little bit more difficult. So is there any state that you would be saying, wow, I'd be surprised in the sense that he's going to, that he keeps on going to try and see if he can flip?
Yes, I think there are a couple states here that could be in play that people don't recognize. New Jersey could very much be in play. I was going to ask you about New Jersey. New Mexico could be in play. Maine, which has a unique system where they divide their electoral college vote based on congressional district, who carries the congressional. I think Trump could win one and maybe both of those districts. So that would be a change from last time. I think Virginia most definitely is now in play. It's interesting. 100,000 more veterans voted for Youngkin in 2022, or turned out for the election in which he was elected, than voted in the election 2020 where Trump relatively narrowly lost Virginia. So I think Virginia is also potentially in play.
And that could change the whole map completely.
It could. Now, there may be states out there that Trump is counting on that end up going for Kamala, but I don't see that today, as of today. I don't know what state that would be.
That can happen if let's say Jersey, let's say Virginia, let's say Maine can be flipped. That can change.
Well, that means that the pressure comes off of you, in terms of having to carry Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania.
Right.
Or Michigan, which I think is the most difficult of those states.
So you said something, and I just, before I forget, you said something about Reagan. What do you think about the Dennis Quaid movie?
It's amazing. I mean, it is really, really amazing. It's so amazing. And I remember I met my wife in the 1980 Reagan campaign.
Yeah.
My wife was Reagan's campaign photographer. That's how we how we met.
She's Cuban too?
Yes, Cuban American. Very proud. Our father was a Cuban diplomat, so even though she was born in Washington, D.C., she grew up in Havana, and then he was reposted to Washington. At the end of the movie, first of all, there was nobody else in the theater, so we were alone because we saw it on a Thursday, a rainy Thursday night. Rainy Monday night. We were the only two people in the theater.
Nice day to be in a movie.
It was great, and we went to the early show. There was nobody there. And as the credits rolled, we just sat there, and we were both crying. We were both crying uncontrollably. It's that powerful. Really? It's that powerful. I have a review of it up on Substacks, also at stonezone.com. I strongly recommend it. It is historically accurate. There are a few characters that I think should have been in the movie that weren't. There are a few characters in the movie I think were not depicted properly. But overall, it's historically active. My friend Robert Davi, who I spoke to earlier, plays Leonid Brezhnev in the movie. He's really great. John Voight plays a KGB agent. So the entire movie is seen through the eyes of a retired KGB agent who's briefing a younger agent. And the younger agent's question is, this guy Reagan, how did he bring down the wall? How did he change the world? How long were you watching him? When did you know this was going to happen? So the whole story is told, through his eyes. John Voight's very effective in the role as well.
That it's crazy because, so much of the Hollywood elites were against that, are like so against that as Quaid with this whole thing of this movie.
Well, they had a hard time. It took a long time to make the movie. I remember the people who made this movie, Mark Joseph, who was the producer, contacted me, I think 7 years ago, saying he was going to make this and wanted an interview, not to be in the movie, but to get a better feel for what Reagan was like, because I had spent so much time with him. So it took a long time to make. It's extremely well made. I highly recommend it. It's really excellent.
Great. Wanted to take your take on that one.
Well, before we finish, I wanted to ask you, all right, elections finalized. Who do you see maybe two young stars that you think can do well in each party coming up in the next 2 to 3 years? Who would you say are your two young stars that you think could get to the country?
Well, first of all, I am a fan of JD Vance. I think that the attacks on him were born of elitism because he started out poor and he came up and earned everything he had. And he's been successful in business and entertainment. And he's been a very good U.S. senator. So I think he's got a great future. I also like Tulsi Gabbard. Now, technically, she's an independent today.
Yeah.
I think she knows you can't get elected president as an independent. I personally would like to see her become a Republican. I hope she does that, but I think she has a great future. As for rising stars in the Democrat Party, I'm really the wrong person to ask. Yes. First of all, I don't know many of these members of Congress. I just don't know much about them, so I'm not the right person to answer.
What about the Republican Party? Apart from Tulsi and
well, I would like to see Tulsi become a Republican. Therefore, I'd have my two. But look, Donald Trump Jr. is a friend of mine. He could have a great political future if he wanted one. I like Eric Trump as well. I think Eric seems to be more oriented to business than politics. Yeah. But either one of them could have a great future.
Yeah. All right. So to close out, I know that you don't have an Instagram page. But for those people out there that are seeing this and they want to know where to find you and where to hear more thoughts of Roger Stone.
Where can they say thank you or curse you or...
Well, sure. Well, first of all, I'm on X, used to be known as Twitter. I'm Roger J. Stone Jr., Roger J. Stone Jr., and yes, I'm verified, so you can find me there. I'm on Truth Social as Real Roger Stone because some schmuck has my real name, so I can't have it. And, of course, you can go to stonezone.com. You can go to rumble.com/Roger Stone and see the Stone Zone every day at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we talk politics for an hour.
I like that. And you said you have a radio station?
I do. I'm at
national now, though?
Yes, they've just become syndicated, so I'm based out of 77 WABC Radio in New York. And we are syndicated by the Red Apple Audio Network. You can go to WABCradio.com and hear the show every Sunday from 3 to 6 Eastern. And if you think being interesting for 3 hours is not difficult, wow.
I bet it is. But you have a lot of interesting stories.
Yeah. Well, remember, the stories just continue. The story just continues.
I mean, I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah.
Hours and hours.
So again, before we leave for sure, how's the night going to end November 4th?
I don't answer hypothetical questions. I think the president's going to win, but I also think it's going to be close and very hard fought. So if you're one of those voters who thinks, "Oh, this isn't
Your vote's not going to count,"
your vote's not going to count, or Trump has it in the bag, neither one of those things are true.
So but are you more in? Do you believe in the mail-in, or you should just go and vote personally?
I prefer voting in person because there are chain of custody issues on a lot of these mail-in votes that bother
Also,
me.
do I feel like, writing it in and going in, like, you feel like you're doing your duty, like walking in and seeing the people and stuff.
People get comfortable. Well, listen to me, Roger. It's always such a great time.
Pleasure.
It's a best when you come to the show. Everybody gets excited when say, Roger's coming to the podcast.
Waiting for this.
Yeah, you get everybody coming to the office.
Well, and you can also, my wife is on Instagram, so Nydia Stone, Nydia, Nydia Stone. She's on Instagram. They haven't banned her yet.
Oh, man, hopefully not. I mean, I'm just hoping that they don't shadow ban these videos when we start putting them up. They didn't do it last time, but we're much bigger now, so these things are going to get way more traction than they did before.
Well, look, if they do... If they do, I'll be happy to put them up in my Rumble channel.
We'll put them up there anyways, too.
We're just talking.
And if you talk to Trump, he has an open invite, to call out here too, or we can go to him. That would be pretty cool.
Oh, we're here. Welcome everybody. Go ahead. Do their platform with us here.
Yeah, we're trying to get Marco Rubio now.
Let's see. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
Thank you. Great to see you.